Alrighty, guys. Really sorry I'm getting this to you so late tonight, but I wanted to think through exactly what I was putting out there. So this relates to a few of your questions from today. It's using one of the specific examples, but it should give all of you a good example of how to do a lot of things to build towards a scene. What I'm about to do is there isn't really anything in here generally that you all haven't seen in the other videos yet. So I wanted to go through this really quickly to show you how to get there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to pull a record out of a sleeve and play it on a record player and have it play music. So, and the idea here being that since I've shown you most of this stuff, I'm going to move fairly quickly and you all can, revisit the video as you need. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project here. Call this one record. You can actually add asset packages at the get-go. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to specifically include Steam VR. So I'm going to say done. I'm going to say create project. So when this gets open, what we're going to do, first thing I'm going to do is set up the scene to get it to kind of how I want it. Then I'm going to set up the basic interaction elements. Then I'm going to set up the animation. And then I'm going to set up the audio. And you'll see how it all kind of comes together. And the other thing I should specify is I will not be using any high fidelity assets. You would want to use hi-fi assets for a final version of something like this. One of the key things about this is really pay attention when I'm doing things like animations, because there are little tricks that can really, or little things that can trip you up. And the same thing with the interaction stuff. There's some stuff that can really trip you up there as well. So getting this loaded up should be done pretty soon. And by all means, this video stemmed from a few questions that I got from you all today. Please continue that. Send me out questions. Let me know kind of what you're trying to work towards. That'll help me kind of tailor continued tutorials. All right, so we've got Steam VR in here. We've got a new project, and all right, let's get going. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do new scene. All right, file, save as. Call this one record play. All right, let's get the visuals in the scene set up, or at least the basics of the scene. So first things first, I'm going to get rid of this main camera. I know I don't need it because I'm going to be using Steam VR. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to 3D object plane, and we're going to call this one floor. I'm going to duplicate that object and I'm going to call this one teleport area. I'm going to go ahead and go 3D object, cube, And going to scale that a little bit, and basically create a little table. On that cube, I'm going to go ahead and let's duplicate that. Actually, we'll go ahead and call this one table. Going to hit Command D to duplicate, or Control D. Going to call this one record player. Okay. So obviously we want to scale this record player and have it sit on the table. So scale way down. Going to go up top, go like this. And on the X and the Y, we're probably going to want to go with something like 0.6. Sorry, on the X and the Z, 0.6. Yep, that's feeling pretty good. Gonna get that gizmo out of there. Great. Okay. Scale it down a little bit. Bring it down. And great, sitting on the table. Now, on top of the record player, we're going to want to do a mat that the record's going to spin on. So we're going to go ahead and do cylinder. I'm going to remove this capsule collider. And then I'm going to scale the cylinder down, like so. And like so. And then from there, one of the things I'm going to do actually with the base is I'm going to scale it a little bit like this. And you'll see why in just a bit. Pull this up. Again, scale this way down. And right about there. So that's our turntable. And our cylinder, we want it to be the same on the X and the Y, and it is. Okay, great. Good. All right, so child of the record player. Boom. Next child of the record player, we're actually going to go ahead and add another cube. And we're going to call this one cartridge, which is where the needle would go. Going to come up here. Going to go ahead and scale this way down. Okay, and let's see, probably something along these lines. Yep, that works for me. I think that's good. I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to call this one arm. Going to come up here, going to make it a little smaller, make it longer. Move it over here, and I know this is all hard to see right now in white like this. We'll change all that in a second. So, cool. So we've got our needle that we would use to play the record. And then I'm going to do one more cube. And we'll call this one pivot. And once again, I'm going to scale this guy way down to right about that. Right about that. By the way, guys, I'm going to send you all this scene after the fact so that you can all use it. So we're going to put that right there. Going to rotate it on the Y by 90. Whoops. 180. No. Okay, I'm going to take the arm and the cartridge, and what I'm going to do now, just move that back a little bit. Going to take the arm and the cartridge, going to actually add an empty, and we're going to call this pivot point. And we're going to look from above, and with this empty, we're going to take this pivot point and put it right where the arm would pivot. So if any of you are familiar with how record players work, kind of this arm comes in, does a pivot. So got our pivot point there. We're now going to, now that we have it in place, we're going to take our arm and our cartridge, make it a child of the pivot point. We're going to take our pivot point and move it down. We want to move our pivot block up just a little bit. Scale it up a bit. Okay, and our pivot point is going to come right about there and right about there, and then we're going to rotate it along that pivot point. We'll say -90 for now, and then oops, here's what I did wrong. Let me just show you. So remember when I said pay attention to when I'm doing certain things. So we want to keep that pivot, but we want to make this a local rotation, because what was happening was it was squishing against the world space. And so now there we go. All right. So we got that arm in place. Great. Going to go ahead and save at this point because we've got a fair amount in place. Next steps. We are going to go ahead and I am going to, on top of my table, I'm actually going to duplicate the record. Now, just on top of the table. Right click, 3D object cube, and I'm going to come in here and do, we're going to call this one sleeve. So this is going to be the record sleeve. I'm going to scale this one to like 0.01. Oh, we're still on the local. And so now we want to go global. So I'm going to say 0.01. And like 0.5, 0.5. And there we go. Going to rotate it on the Z axis so that we can set this on the table. And so for now, we're just going to kind of position it about roughly where it's going to be. Great. And then from there, let's start to get things looking a little more how we want them. So first things first, going to come up here to Window, going to go to Rendering Lighting Settings, going to come in here, and I'm actually going to take out my skybox, and then I'm going to go to Source for my ambient environmental light and say Color. Actually, you know what? say gradient. I'm going to put some like a bluish and kind of a purplish for the center color of the gradient, and the ground color will go back to like a darker bluish. And ambient mode, we will say real time here. And there we go, sun source here. Right now you can see we're not seeing any of those lights, so we actually want to put a directional light in there. And then the skybox material, yeah, we don't want the skybox in there. Alrighty, so we're going to save, and for some reason this is not actually showing here, and I don't actually know why. But we will go ahead and grab that directional light. Could be because there's no camera here. We're going to grab that directional light, and I'm going to put it on this one, kind of a bluish hue, and pull the intensity down a bit. All right, so now what I want to do is start making materials. So in my assets, I'm gonna put the record play scene in the scenes folder. I'm gonna right click, create folder, materials, and now I'm gonna hit Control D, and I'm going to say textures, and I'm gonna hit Control D again, say audio, and one more time, say animations. All right, and finally we're gonna just do one more of these, and scripts. All right, so from here we're gonna go into materials, right click, create material. I'm gonna call this floor. Gonna Command D. Going to call this record base. Sorry, player base. Command D. Pivot box. Command D. Needle arm. Command D. Cartridge. Command D. Sleeve. Command D. Vinyl. Command D. Record label. All right, so this is going to get us pretty far along. So for the floor, I really just want kind of a dark gray for this. Not very smooth, not very shiny. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. And maybe. There we go. Great. All right, so we have this floor. Now, oh, I forgot one more. We need table. We'll make this one kind of a lighter gray, kind of something like that. Go drag that on there. For the player base, we'll go with kind of like a woodish color here, and something kind of like that. Okay, and at this point, I'm actually going to pull my directional light up just a little bit, and I'm going to do this, and I don't really know why my anyway, don't worry about that. It's got some kind of weird lighting. Oh, the other thing we need, I didn't name this, is our mat that we'd be playing the records on. All right, Go ahead and make that kind of a fun color. That could be like, not that. Yeah, something like that. And probably kind of usually like felt fabric kind of thing. So we'll go ahead and put that on there. Okay. I'm going to grab the, I'll pull these out for a second, figure out why they are looking weird. And it's probably this weird rotation. Really just want that to be 90. Really don't know. Yeah, okay. There we go. So 90. While I'm here, I'm going to take that box collider off. Just don't need that. All right, so same thing with the cartridge. Just going to make that 90. And okay. So, yep, now I'm going to put those back under the pivot point. All right, so back to our materials. For the cartridge itself, probably going to do kind of like a silver color, so something like that. We'll kick up that metallic value. Pop that on there. And then for the needle arm, I'm going to go with a darker color, something a little more like that. And then for the pivot box, we'll just go black with this and pretty matte. Yep. All right. Cool. Final thing for our record player, we're going to come in here, going to go to our mat, and we're going to go to 3D object. We're going to go to cylinder, and going to take this capsule collider off. Going to then scale our cylinder that I'm adding here, and all right, and this is our spindle. Could probably even stand to scale it down even more. All right, so thing I'll say here on this, I'm just going to use the same pivot box material. And cool, so there we go, record player, great. Next, I'm going to bring a texture over, put it in my textures. Going to do sleeve. Going to come here, going to change it to the album cover. Drag that up here, and there we go. So we have the album now. We're actually going to rotate this. Oops. there. Great. All right. So finally, we just need to bring a record in. I actually went and grabbed one of these here. Got this little vinyl record. So we're gonna move that over here into assets and make another folder for meshes. Drag that in. Now I'm going to go in there. I'm going to put that vinyl record in the sleeve, make it a child of that. I'm going to right click, unpack prefab completely. Now what I'm going to do is, from looking from above, I'm going to actually drag this over here really quickly. Looks like we probably need to go up about 1.5. Let's see, maybe even 1.7. Yeah, feeling pretty good about that. So don't forget to save. I'm going to drag this back over, and for our local position to the sleeve, we're going to say 0, 0, 0. And then what I want to do is actually want to have this start the scene kind of peeking out just a little bit, so that you can grab it and pull the record out to play it on the table. I'm going to turn off the render on the sleeve for a quick second. I'm going to go back to my materials, go to my vinyl material, put this on there. Of course, we don't want white. We want something more like, obviously, black vinyl, and then give it kind of this shiny plastic color, which you can't really see up here, but you can see here. And don't really need metallic in there. So, and then for the record label itself, I'm going to put that right there in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and put the same album cover in there. Whoops. Wrong one. I accidentally put it on my vinyl. So record label, come in here. All right. So we've got that. Whoops. Got that in the middle there. I do want to scale this. We're going to tile it. So around 6 looks good. Probably do like, yeah, I think that right there is pretty much what we want. Maybe like 6.5. And then some of this is just kind of finessing. All right, so feeling pretty good about that. Okay, gonna save again. And the only thing I'll say here on our record is I'm actually gonna go to like 2 on the X scale. Or maybe even a little more, I guess. We'll do like 50. Sure, why not? All right, so let's save. Go to our sleeve, turn our render on. Yep, I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm liking it. I think it's feeling like a nice setup. Only thing I'm going to say from here is going to go ahead and I want to add just some quick spotlighting. So at this point, scene's starting to get kind of busy, so I just want to keep an eye on that. I'm going to go ahead and right click, light, spotlight. I'm going to drag it right above there. And from there, I'm just going to, whoops, too high. All right. So we've got our perspective view. And so probably move our sleeve over just a little bit, right, to be in the center there, right? Alrighty, and then I'm going to duplicate that. So we'll call this album spot. Going to duplicate that. Boom. Look at it from this perspective, and going to throw one on top of the record player. So we'll call this one player spot. All right, going to right click, create an empty. Going to go here and say lighting. And actually, since this is just an empty, we're going to do star, 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 lighting. Going to duplicate that. Call this environment. All right, put our two spotlights into lighting, put our directional light into lighting. Pop that guy up there. Going to take floor, going to take teleport area, table, put that into environment, move that there, and then I'm going to actually do one more. Call this interactables. Not sure if I spelled that right. Not even sure if that's a word, but hey, there we go. So we'll throw that in there. All right, cleaning up that scene, looking good. So I'm digging this. I'm liking where the scene's at. All right, next step, let's get some interactions in place. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to pick this guy up with the left hand, be able to pick up the record with the right hand, place it on the record player, and have it start playing some music. So how do we go about doing that? Well, first things first, let's go ahead and, we haven't done this yet, we're going to go to Window, Steam VR Input. First time we do this for a project, it's going to say it looks like it's missing the actions JSON. The actions are how we map the things that the controller can do to the buttons. So things like teleporting, grabbing, pinching, squeezing, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to say save and generate. Great. That's done. Close that. Going to come in here, going to right click. Actually, you know what? Going to come down here. Going to click on Steam VR, Interaction System, Samples. Actually, no, sorry for this. Core, Prefabs, Player. We're going to drag our player prefab into the scene. Now, kind of want the player to start off looking at the record player. So we're going to just do a -90 rotation, pop the player right about there, and make sure that's 0 on the y-axis so that they are standing on the ground. And that is the case here. Great. All right. Command S to save. Gonna then go back to our interaction system, go to the teleport folder, prefabs, bring the teleporting prefab into the scene, which will enable us and allow us to do some teleporting. Don't really need to do anything else with this for now. We do need to go into our environment and go to our teleport area. we need to go to Add Component, Teleport Area. And that's going to make it so that we can teleport around on that. Now, one note on this, teleport area and the floor are on the same Y position right now. And actually, I'm seeing here that we actually want to move our entire environment over. So we're going to reset that. And now with the floor, same thing. We're going to reset that. And teleport area, we are going to reset that. And then table and interactables. First things first, we'll move the table up. So kind of right around there. And we'll probably need to adjust the table. I'm going to take this box collider off the table. We don't need that. And then for our interactables, we're just going to go ahead and slide that over and slide them up and just make sure that they are on the table. And while we're at it, on that base of my record player, I'm going to go ahead and take that box collider off too. The mat, we need a box collider, so we're going to add component, box collider. Great. Digging that. Okay. Cylinder does not need one. This one here we're actually going to call spindle. The pivot box, we're going to remove that box collider. And then pivot point, pivot cartridge, we will remove. Arm, we will remove. Great. So we're all set up. And then on our sleeve, we do want a box collider. And on our vinyl record, we also want to add a box collider. Great. So we're good on colliders. We're good on environment. And in this case, we are good with our player. I think I'm actually going to move our table and our interactables back a bit. And we actually need to move our spotlights to match that. All right, perfect. So got our environment in a pretty good place. So we'll continue with our AR things. So we have our player, our teleporting, and now our teleport area, which we want to be, I'm going to do 0.01 above the floor, because if they're on the same plane, they will render kind of strangely. So we'll just do that. All right, we've got our teleport area, we've got our player, we've got our teleporting prefab. I'm going to go ahead and create an empty here, call this one VR. I'm going to reset that so it's at 0. And I'm going to go ahead and put our player and our teleporting both in there. All right. Let's get some interaction in place, and then we can start testing, seeing how we feel about it. So, first thing we want to do is we're going to come here to our interactables. We're going to go, the only one we're really going to have interactable right now is the sleeve and the vinyl record. So we need to have a few things on here. So in terms of the sleeve and the vinyl record, we'll just start with the sleeve first. We know we need a collider because that's going to be a thing that allows us to actually grab it. We're just going to leave that as is, because if we look at where it is, oh, we actually do need to edit that. Glad we checked. All right, so that's the collider for the vinyl. Turn that off. And then the sleeve. Oh, no, we're actually good on that. So, perfect. So we don't need to do that anymore. So minimize that. We're going to add component, rigid body. And specifically, we want to have gravity on this so that it falls. And you know what? I actually took the collider off this table. I'm going to go ahead and add it back on. so that this thing with gravity has something to actually sit on. So box collider on the table. So back to the sleeve. We got a rigid body on there. I'm going to minimize that. Now we add all the VR stuff. The main one is this interactable script. Really the main thing we need to do here is go ahead and this one here, activate action set on attach. We're going to say actions default. These are these actions we generated up here with the Steam VR input. We're going to go ahead and leave the rest of that as is. So now, in order to have it actually kind of pick up and do stuff, we need to add this throwable script. And you'll notice that it also adds this velocity estimator. And once again, we're going to do nothing with those. So interactable, velocity estimator, throwable, straight out of the box as is. Finally, we're going to add one final component. And this one is actually really important. This one's going to be called interactable hover events. All right. And as you can see here, this lets us pick what to do with things when hover begins or ends on this object, hand begins or ends attachment. So some important stuff there. All right. That should be everything we need on our sleeve to make it work. I'm going to go ahead and go to the vinyl record, and we're actually going to do the same thing. So, interactable, throwable. Oh, and you'll notice when I added throwable, it added the rigid body for me because I had forgotten to do it. And then finally, the interactable hover events. So this is everything that we're going to need to really get everything interactive. Now, let's go ahead and actually hit play, and you'll see, go ahead and turn on my controllers here. And throw on my headset. Interesting. So for some reason, there we go. All right. So now you can see here, I can hold down this teleport and really get up here. If I reach out, on hover, it allows me to pick this up, but you'll notice it's starting to do weird things with our record. We definitely don't want that. This is doing exactly what we want, right? That's got pretty good physics, all that kind of stuff, right? So here's where the more complicated stuff comes in. But honestly, it's not that complicated. It just involves kind of thinking through some things. So the reason it's doing that is there is a collider on this and a collider on that. And they are colliding, right? They're saying we cannot occupy the same space. This is where the on-hand hover begin stuff comes in. So first things first, we're going to set the default for our scene, meaning when we start. We're going to say that this vinyl record, which is a child of the sleeve, does not have a box collider turned on. We're just going to turn it off. Okay. Then, from there, what we want to do is think through our interactable stuff. So if I'm grabbing the sleeve with my left hand, because I'm right-handed, grab the sleeve with my left hand, and I want to pull out the record with my right hand, effectively, what we want is as soon as, just for, even though we're starting the scene with no box collider turned on the vinyl, on-hand hover, that's when this starts to become interactive. I'm just going to double check and make sure that we turn off. So, sorry, just a reminder what I did here. Add an action. I'm going to drag in my vinyl record. I'm going to drop down, go to box collider, and I'm going to say enabled, and I'm going to leave it unchecked. Now I'm going to on hand hover end. I actually want that collider to go back. So basically when I put this down, I want this to have a collider again. So I'm going to go ahead and say vinyl record. When I stop hand hovering on the sleeve, I want the box collider to become enabled again. All right, so that's the sleeve. So now let's take a look at the record itself. Well, there's a few things here. On this one, instead of wanting the hover, we want to do attach. And so when we attach, we actually want the vinyl record box collider. We just want to make sure that sorry, not the vinyl record. Yes, the vinyl record box collider. So we're going to do attach. Right, we want this. We want to make sure that that box collider is on. So enabled. And then when we detach from the hand, that's when, so I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to add, because you're probably asking if I hover here or grab this, then how am I supposed to grab this if the box collider's turned off? So we're going to do actually a grab point. So we're going to grab the vinyl, going to right click, create an empty, and I'm going to call this grab point. And because it's a child of the vinyl, we can grab that without it affecting the other stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is move this to where we want the grab point to be, right around here. I'm going to go to add component. Again, box collider. Going to edit the collider. And we're just going to make it the edge of the record here. So for sliding that record out, this is pretty much right about what we want. And now look at it from the side. Obviously, we don't want it really tall like that. We just want it to be about the size of this. All right, great. So now going back to our interactables. On our vinyl, when we detach our vinyl from our hand, we actually want that grab point. We want to turn that box collider off. And that way it's not going to start bouncing around with things. In addition, we're going to start this vinyl record in the rigid body without gravity. And we're going to have it say is kinematic. And that's going to mean that it's always going to stay as the child of this until we start moving it. And so now on that down here, we want to say that when we let go, right, when we detach from hand, on that vinyl record, we actually want to turn gravity on. So we're going to rigid body, gravity, use gravity, yes. So when we detach, start using gravity. And that way the record will fall. At this point, this should be the interactions we want here. So let's go ahead and give it a try. So I'm going to press play. And actually, apologies, I'm going to go ahead and maximize this so you can see it a bit better. All right, so what you're noticing here is that everything was going according to plan. The only exception was that when we let that record player go, it started floating in midair. The reason for that is because even though we turned gravity on, we didn't turn off the fact that it's kinematic. So we're going to say plus. I'm going to drag that vinyl record over one more time. I'm going to go to the rigid body. And we're going to say, is kinematic? No. Turn that off. All right, so give it one more test. And sure enough, that that is what we are after. So, great. And you can see there the colliders just hit one another. Kind of goes flying like that. There's ways to control that later, but for now, we'll just leave that the way it is. So, you can grab that album, pull it out. Now, the next thing, we want that album to effectively play music when it goes on the record player. So, how do we do that? Well, first things first, we want to tag a few things so that we know when something hits something else. So we're going to click on that vinyl record. We're going to come up here to tag. We are going to add tag. Going to hit this plus. We are going to type in record, save. In this case, I'm using a capital R. Capitalization matters. Just remember what you've put in there. And then we want to also track this mat. So basically saying when it hits the mat, start playing music. So I'm going to hit plus. I'm going to say mat, save. So now I select my record. I come up here and I tag it as a record. I select my mat. I come up here. I tag it as a mat. And now, what I want to happen. On my mat, I want to add component, audio source, and this is going to start playing music when we have it do something we want it to do. And so specifically, I'm just going to bring in a quick audio track here. And that should import pretty quickly. And again, I want to keep things clean, so I'll put that, make sure that's in my audio. All right, so go back to clicking my mat. Go to audio clip. I'll just find that one I just brought in. All right, so we've got our mat noted with a tag, and we've got our record noted with a tag. So now we just need to write some scripts, and they're fairly straightforward, but I'm just going to cruise through them so that we can get them in place. And I'm going to send this project out so you guys can see the scripts that I'm putting on here. You can dissect this project. So first things first, on the mat, we're going to go add component, new script, and we're going to say record player, create an ad. I'm going to double click. All right, what do we need to do here? First things first, we need to access the audio. So we're going to come up here and we are going to say audio source with a capital A. And when you see it's that light kind of cyan color, that means that it's something within Unity. It's called a class. A class basically is like a way of thinking of a group of behaviors, and they're predetermined. So we have this audio source component that we've used on this object, and we're going to use that behavior. We need to put a variable so we understand kind of how to access those behaviors. So we're just going to call this one audio, put a semicolon at the end. Within this start function, we want to reference the audio component. So we're going to say audio equals get component audio source. Make sure you put those parentheses and a semicolon there. We're going to get rid of our update function because we don't need it. And so now we're going to say void. We're going to start to type on collision enter. And you'll see that it automatically populates for us. And we're effectively saying on collision enter, look for this other collider and do something with it. So in this particular case, remember we are on the mat right now, right? We are going to say if the collision that happens to the mat comes from a game object with a tag that equals, and we want to use two equals to compare. Using parentheses, we say record. So if that collision is from a game object with the tag record, we are going to audio dot play. And that's it. So let's give that a test. I'm gonna make sure you save your script. So Control S or Command S. We're gonna hit play here. All right, and we're gonna come up here. We're gonna grab our album. We are going to pull out our record, and you'll see that it did not work. And so let's figure out why. Let's see first if there's anything in our console. There is not. So one of the things we need to check, this has mat, vinyl record has record, capital R, and our mat has audio, and all right. So within our script here, we are saying audio source audio equals get component audio source. On collision enter, if collision.gameObject.tag equals record, then audio.play. So this should be working here. It is possible that it was playing, and that's why digital output set to none. I guess what I'll do here is just say speakers, so you guys can hear this. Let's try this again. And then if not, I'll show you how to figure out if it's, actually, we'll just add this in there. A way to tell if something is working. Inside of a function, you're going to add debug.log, and then in parentheses, some kind of message. So like, this works. Great. So we'll save that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to hit play. And we're going to try again. And sure enough, it is playing, but it's playing through my Vive speakers, my Vive headset, which is what we want. And that's this USB audio device. Or we could actually change it here. Or we could say this one. You guys might actually be able to hear this one now. Sorry, my controller was dying, so I was just plugging that guy in. All right, so great. We've got it so you can place the record down, starts playing music, kind of does all the things we want. I'm just going to add just a little bit of final polish here, and then we'll be done. So how are we going to add polish? Well, you notice that we did put this matte tag on here, so we're actually going to look for something there. I'll show you here in a second. So I want to do two things. First things first, I want to take on my interactables and my vinyl record. I'm going to go to my animation. I am going to create an animation. I'm going to call this one spin. I'm going to save. And then this is really important. I want the record to spin around itself, not some weird global location. So I am going to go and select local up here. Now I'm going to hit record to start recording. And I want to rotate, you'll see here in the local space, this is actually around the x-axis. So we are going to rotate, we're going to start at 0, and then right about a minute, we are going to go to 359. And so You'll see here, I'm going to go ahead and turn the renderer off, the mesh collider, mesh renderer off on the sleeve, just so we can preview this. Click the vinyl record, hit play. You notice it's got kind of a weird spin. That's not what we want. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to look at the curves. And sure enough, this is not the easing curve we want for this. We actually want linear. So there's two handles. We're going to right click. We're going to go left tangent, linear. Going to right click, right tangent, linear. Whoops. There we go. And now if we hit play, sure enough, it spins right around. And we could even add, if we wanted, just a little bit of flavor here. We could go to record again, and we could add just a little bit of rotation around the Y axis. And I'm talking like maybe even, I don't know, 1. Let's see. Let's see if that's noticeable. 0, let's do like, let's do 7. So we're going to start at 0, and then at 5, we're going to do 7. At 10, we're going to do 0. And so on and so forth. And so what is it we're doing here? Well, if you ever watch a record, it kind of has like a little wobble to it, just a little bit. And so this will help make it feel just a little more organic as it's going around. Still has a frequency, so that's why we're doing it on a set interval. So 7, 0, 7, 0. So now if we go ahead and play, 7 might have been a bit ambitious, but you get the idea. So I'm going to go ahead, Control S. Now, what we want to have happen on that record, we are going to add a component to the record. We're going to do new script, and we're going to say record animation. Now we need to do something on the animator first. And I showed you this in the video on animation the other day. We need to right click, create state empty. I'm going to call this one idle. And we're going to make that our default. And so now we have this spin up here. So what we want to do is we want to go back to here. And we want to open up our record animation script. And so this is going to be like our audio player, but we want this to be an animation. So we're going to say animator, anim. So that's, again, that class animator. We're going to do a variable anim. Start. We're going to say anim equals get component animator. Great. So we've got our component, and now we want to look for a collision again. So you'll notice I accidentally just deleted a curly bracket there. We don't want to do that. All right, so void on collision enter. This time we want to look for if collision dot game object dot tag equals mat, then we want to say anim, whoops, anim dot play, and this time we want to name the state. So that one we called it when we recorded it, we called it spin. So we're going to say if this record collides with the mat on the record player, then go ahead and spin. Now, there's one little tweak here. you notice when we placed it down, it just kind of fell where we put it. We kind of want to have it snap in where it goes, just to give it a little bit of that extra polish and make sure it's spinning around the center. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to minimize this really quickly. I'm going to go to our record player. This is why we put that spindle in there. I'm going to right click on the spindle and say create empty and call this spindle pivot. And if I double click on spindle pivot, oh, we are local. If I double click on, nope, okay. Well, if I go in to spindle pivot, I just want to make sure that it's right smack in the center and basically right around where we want the record to sit, which is right about there. Perfect. So now we're going to go back here. Where something is in world space is called a transform, right? We know that because we've got this transform. So we're actually going to make a reference to that pivot point that we just made. So I'm just going to say spindle pivot. Okay. And what we're going to do here, we are going to say if collision with game object is matte, then game object, meaning the game object we are working with, dot transform dot position equals spindle pivot dot position. Save. And so this is going to take that game object that we are, in this case, the record, and make it equal to that spindle pivot. And then it's going to start playing that spin animation. Let's go ahead and give this a test, see what we get. And we're going to check our console just for any errors. So this is fine. We'll clear all that. So we're going to hit play. Alrighty. So I'll go ahead and teleport over. Oh, I forgot to whoops. Whoops. There we go. Well, that was the wrong button. We just need to turn the renderer on our sleeve. So sleeve, mesh renderer, yes. And we also want to save. So I'm going to Command S, and we'll hit play. Teleport on over. All right, we are picking up our record. Good. We are grabbing the record out. Now, we do have a little issue here. You see when I grabbed this, it flipped around on the side and started doing kind of weird things. And that's because we put that animator on there. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to fix that here real quick. Go ahead and select your vinyl. And you see here in the animator where it says root position or rotation are controlled by curves. We actually want to say apply root motion. And that's basically going to look at this and say, okay, let's only play the animation on the object itself instead of using that as the actual transform. So again, teleport over. Oops. This is where the finessing part comes in. Scene. I'm gonna come here, make sure. Yep, that's where that is. I'm gonna change this to unscaled time, and I believe. Oh, we don't have a spindle pivot here. We need that. So we're going to drag this spindle pivot into there. Hit Control S, hit play. we can tweak that later, but you get the idea. And now we set this here. And as you can see, the record is spinning, the music is playing, and the next step would be probably finessing the needle to animate over, but we can reach out, we can grab this, and we could actually do an on-collision exit to turn the music off if we wanted to. But, alright, so, pretty cool stuff. And the other thing I would say here, guys, is hopefully this gives you an idea of exactly how you can use triggers. In fact, one thing I would say here, we do want to finesse as to why this vinyl record is kind of popping out of the sleeve there. And my thought would be that we are not using gravity right away. That is what it is. Yep. So we're using gravity on the sleeve. We are not using gravity on the vinyl record. So I'm going to start with gravity on that. That should do it for us. We can also just make sure that the sleeve is kind of down here. And that'll help. And then I am just going to add really quickly, just so you guys can see, on that record player, we're going to do on collision exit. Or say audio.stop. And so now let's just double check, see if we fixed our record. And by the way, the sky's the limit here with this code. You could even, we could do this thing. We could say, we're going to pull in these 3 lights, and then on collision enter, we're going to go ahead and say L1 dot I'm going to put some 3 lights in the scene that we're going to set as inactive. And then you'll see here in just a second. L3. Okay, so save. Whoops. Go save that. So now if you look at our mat, it's looking for those lights. So let's add some lights in the scene. I'm going to say we're going to go ahead and light, spotlight. And maybe this is like where the user is, or maybe this is, we'll just do something like this. We'll do 1, 2, 3. And move all those guys up. Okay, and then the first one we're going to set to some fun color. And the second one we're going to set to another fun color. And same thing with the third one. And, ultimately what we could do is have these all alternate, etc. But we're going to come in here and do this one, and this one, and this one. I'm going to set them all to inactive. And put that in there. And actually, what I'll do here is I'm going to add an animator. Actually, I'm not going to do that in this video. You'll just see here, we're going to go ahead and do this final demo. Whoops. Okay, grab this, put it here, and those lights are on. They're just really not very bright, but you could have them blinking and all that. And then we could pull this off, and like we said, it stops playing, put it back on, starts playing again. And you could even have the audio in this record, so each record could actually play different music. And you can listen to music and hang out in VR. Whew. All right. I know that was a lot, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you learned some stuff there. And you can take it and do with it as you will. Let me know if you have any questions.